No, I didn't.
No, that's good. I got to share it real quick to our socials, and then we'll dive right into the podcast.
No, this is like. Did you watch sports writers on TV back in the
Oh,
day?
of course. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So the way that I met Rick Tellender was that I had a radio show in high school, and I would look through the phone book for people to call for
No, you
guests.
didn't.
And so I got Pat Fitzgerald his senior year at Northwestern, and then I got Rick. But I called him. I left a message. My brother and I shared an answering machine, and he called back, left a message, and he said, "Hey, Jack, this is Rick Tellender. I'm not available to come meet you, but what if you came to the set of the show, watched the taping of the show, and interviewed all four of us?"
Okay.
I was like, "Word, that's like your disappointing counteroffer. That's the greatest thing I've ever heard."
Right?
They talked all the way through the commercial breaks. So you know how they would like fade out? Like they would like finish a topic and then
Oh yeah, they keep going on.
Bentley or Munson, whoever it was, would like introduce the next thing that they were going to hit after the break, but they would be talking because they would fade to that long shot and they'd be talking and then they'd go to commercial and you're at home watching and then they come back out of commercial and they're talking. They talked straight through however many, like 3 commercial breaks. I mean, they did not stop. And me and my 2 co-hosts interviewed them on their set before they started taping.
Nice.
And basically we set them up with some like very basic, this was like January of 98. So there was stuff about like the national championship, some stuff about the Blackhawks. I remember there was a Chelios thing. There was stuff about like, should they go to a playoff or keep the bowl system, like that sort of stuff. They just went and they just had like 20 minutes of basically a show, but with me and my co-hosts. And then they started taping and then they just went 30 minutes straight through. The genuine article.
There's a picture of that online, right? I think you shared a picture of you there in the studio with Sports Writers on TV.
Yeah, with Rick, Joust, Gleason, and Munson.
Media has changed so much in the last. Well, we'll talk a little bit about it. But are you ready to do a podcast real quick here?
Let's do it.
I got everything shared to the socials, so let's go. All right.
Was that whole thing off air?
No, we're on. But now I'm going to do that.
But now you'll introduce it. But that was some bonus.
Now it's official. That's just for the video guys. We'll do like a podcast here, and maybe after the pod we'll kick it off video guys only. But you know how it is. It's all the new media, like I said. So all right.
Okay, pod.
You ready to rock?
Yeah. Been ready.
What is happening, Chicago Bears fans? This is T Formation Conversation. I'm your host Lester Wildfong, and we're not just talking Bears tonight. I got a special guest. It is my guy, Jack M Silverstein. Jack, my friend, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. Hey, look, I wanted to get you on here because you got a brand new book out. You're a journalist, author, sports historian. You are a resident Bears historian, of course, at Windy City Gridiron. You're on Twitter at ReadJack. readjack.com, a lot of your other good writing stuff, and you got a fantastic Substack. It's called A Shot on Elo. But your brand new book, if you're watching on the video channel, you can see it behind him right there. It is called Wiry Root, Volume 1, Mad Obsessions of a Chicago Sports Fan.
And I gotta give it up to my buddy Ben. We shot this in January of, I think, it was either 08 or 09. I'll just say it was 09. Because we tried it one year, and by the time we scheduled it, the snow was gone. So we had to wait a year. And he shot this and shot the and photoshopped the marquee and did just like a bang up job. And I told him, keep all these files. It was for a project I had canceled.
That's from 09. I was going to ask you about that.
The picture's from 09. Yeah. And I said,
in that picture.
We are, and that is the real deal. That is, my fingers could not grip that sign after a few takes. I remember we went into the Starbucks across the street afterwards because I was just, it was cold.
For you guys that are listening to the podcast, Jack is showing his book there. Awesome picture of you outside of Wrigley from 2009.
Yeah.
Jack Silverstein back then. So look, man, tell us a little bit about the book. Like what's the concept? What's going on here with this awesome book?
Yeah, so this is my first ever sports writing collection. I've always wanted to do one. I love reading collections. Some of my favorite books are collections by Mike Royko, Hunter Thompson, Leonard Pitts. Scoop Jackson is a really old one that probably not a lot of people know about, the dark side, that I love. There's a ton, and I love them. I love them for travel reading. I love them for just the range of topics, and I just love them. I just love writer collections of columns and essays. I've got this big archive, and I was like, I would love to do a collection. Let's do all of my fan voice pieces, and dig into this concept of fandom. And so it's not my history. It's not really my player interviews. There are 2 player interviews in there, but they like tie into big things that I explore as a fan. But yeah, I've always wanted to do that. So it's the best of my work from 2003 to 2023, and almost every major team, season, or player is in here. I think like Burley's perfect game is probably the biggest game that's not in here, and maybe in a way like that 2014 Hawks Kings series, like it's probably a little bit low. I found that a lot of the Blackhawks stuff that I wrote when I was at Red Eye was interviewing other fans, so it was like really good fan material, but it kind of didn't totally fit. But I did include one of those that I loved, and I put that in there. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's just designed to like every page be that, hit of nostalgia that we all love. Sit around and name a player. Name your favorite random blah. Like that's like every page of this book.
So we're talking like 3 decades of Chicago sports fandom here. I mean, this is like we're going back a ways. I mean, it's a long time.
It's 500 pages. Amazon says it's 1.26 pounds. So I'll take their word for it.
There it is.
Yeah.
You mentioned Red Eye, and that's actually where I first became aware of you. I used to read you in Red Eye, which is from the Chicago Tribune. So your career basically started in newspapers. So you have actually spanned journalism. I mean, you've gone newspapers, you've done stuff in blogs, you've done stuff on your own sites. You have mastered the Twitter thread. I got to tell you right now, your Twitter threads are phenomenal. And the cool thing is they never stop. They're just ongoing. Like you'll have a nice thread, and then all of a sudden something else pops up. And I'm like, oh, Jack did something else.
Yeah, I like grouping. I like groups of information. I like being able to kind of like see a story unfold in real time, or my opinions on something. So yeah, there are some threads that I do that are a standalone story that I build out before I tweet it. But then I'll just continue the topic. So anything related to that topic, then I'll just be like, okay, now these are like the DVD bonuses, and do those. And then there are others that are just like topics. Like I tweeted, I think it was when he was 6th in career kickoff return touchdowns, Cordero Patterson. It was when he was in Minnesota. And I had tweeted something because maybe he had just tied Gale Sayers, or maybe he was one behind Gale Sayers. And then like 3 years later, he like passed Gale Sayers, and I did another one because I just remembered that first one. And then he came to the Bears, and then I had like a series of them. And then he left the Bears, and then we did, had the record breaker on Atlanta against the Bears.
Yeah.
It's so weird. So he's got 9 career kickoff return touchdowns. I think 2 were for us, but 3 were against us.
Is Patterson a Hall of Famer?
No.
Not.
I think there are a lot of I never want to say no, but there are a lot of conversations before you get to Cordero Patterson.
Yeah.
But I would say that anyone interested in promoting Cordero Patterson, the angle that you have to bear in mind is that he's a coverage guy as well.
Yes.
I mean, he was all pro for us in the same year at kick returner and at coverage, first team kick, second team coverage. So I don't really love the look at his rushing yards and receiving yards. Like that doesn't move the needle for me. But the idea of being a 2 or 3 phase special teamer and doing different things, that does. So I would say if you were making the Cordero Patterson case, people try to zero in on like comparing his yardage on offense to Devin's yardage on offense, but Devin's not in because of his offensive production.
Yeah.
So I would say that would be where you should look at that. But no, I think there are a lot of people you need to discuss, even just in special teams, before you get to Patterson, who is one of my favorite players and obviously one of my favorite players.
Yeah, Patterson was his brief era in Chicago was a lot of fun. He was great with media, obviously. The stuff he did, for the Bears, for their social channels, just fun. I mean, just a fun player.
Awesome.
So the Bears couldn't, obviously they win a lot of games in his era, but just a good player. And I'm with you. I think he's going to fall a little short, but who knows? I mean, these things are kind of turning. Devin Hester, I want to ask you about that. How happy are you that Devin finally got into the Hall of Fame?
Oh, I was ecstatic. And it's the sort of thing where you do know based on the trends that it should happen, but the only person in all the trends that I've studied who's an outlier is Steve Tasker. So it was kind of like, as much as I was like, this is going to happen, you're not a first ballot finalist and first ballot top 10 for nothing. And remember, his first year on the ballot was Steve Tasker's last year on the ballot. So they chose advancing Hester. I don't want to say, you could have had both of them, so I don't want to say instead of, but like in the year that they had one last chance to get to Tasker and get him in the room before becoming a senior, they ignored that or didn't do it or whatever. And maybe not related, but just kind of, I couldn't help but notice it and think about it, was that they also put Devin in the room and he survived the first vote. He was top 10 his first year. So then it was like, okay, this is definitely happening. But even still, it's like, it's something that until it happens, it still is something that has never happened. Like all these other guys, until they get in, they haven't gotten in.
Yep.
But pass rushers have gotten in, wide receivers have gotten in, O-linemen have gotten in, etc. No returner had gotten in. Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer without his returns. Rod Woodson is a Hall of Famer without his returns. Gale Sayers is probably the only guy who probably needed his return game, but even he was a multi-time rush champ. I mean, probably just because of the years, it probably really helped to have that return game. But Gale Sayers was also named on the 50th anniversary team for the NFL as the NFL's first team halfback after just 4 seasons. So maybe Gale would have been doing it as well. Devin was alone, totally different, totally unique case. And so until you see it, you've literally never seen it. So I was over the moon.
I'm always amazed when the debate comes up, with friends, or you see something online, or it's like, how could you not have watched him play and not thought that's a Hall of Famer? I mean, he changed the game. I mean, he made the punt return like when the teams are going to punt, you're like, okay, whatever. That was must-see TV. Like, you did not leave the television when it was about to be Devin Hester time, because you knew it was a chance to be electrifying. And, you talk about your threads. You had a thread of all his near misses. I mean, yeah, he had a bunch of touchdowns, but he had a ton of runs were fantastic. And it's like, how could you watch them play? And I get, he's just a special teamer, but he's not just a special teamer. He is the greatest return man of all time.
Yeah, it's cool because now that he's in, I don't have to really talk about it much. Like I don't give a shit. Say whatever you want. Don't really care. He's in as he should be. Have your opinion. Go right ahead. I'm fine to talk about other potential Hall of Famers, other specialists in his context. I don't know the degree to which Devin Hester opens doors for other returners, because he is the greatest ever by a long shot, and as held up to that standard, not by you and me, but by the other people who were the very, very best at that thing. So the degree to which, does Devin open the door now for Billy White Shoes Johnson? Does Devin open the door now for Josh Cribbs? Does Devin open the door now for Mel Gray? Does Devin open the door now for Cordell Patterson? Does he open the door for Steve Tasker? I Matthew Slater. I don't know. It's hard to say because he's so far beyond any of these guys. It's not, you know, he didn't like the guys who open the door for people usually are the people who are at the bottom of the position group.
Yeah.
That's where you see that kind of conversation. Oh, this person got in. Well, gosh, how can you keep out this person who's clearly, you know, 3 more all pros or this or same number of rings or whatever it is. Those are the ones that change the bar. Devin doesn't change the bar. And he doesn't even, it's not like he sets a bar. He is a bar.
Yes,
like it's, I hope that it changes it, but I really don't know.
So Devin Hester played obviously in an era that's prominent in your book. You know, a lot of stuff on the 06 Super Bowl Bears.
Yeah.
You know, Thomas Jones, that's one of your guys. You were involved in the video that was actually on Second City Gridiron YouTube channel. Fantastic video.
I love that video.
His career retrospective, basically.
That video makes me smile every time I look at it. Seriously.
Such a short time in Chicago, but he made such an impact for the franchise. And still to this day, there are Bears fans that look back on those brief time in the Navy and Orange with fondness because he was a Bear. I mean, he ran hard. He did everything on the football field. Yep. He did everything the right way. And it's a shame that he didn't have more of a career in Chicago. It's just kind of how the way the draft fell and how the chips fell with his contracts. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they just screwed it up.
They did screw it up.
They just messed it up. Like they drafted. It started with, you know, he came in 04. They signed him on the first night of free agency, and he produced. And he had a career high in rushing yards. He set a Bears franchise running back record for receptions with 56. It was like him and Tiki Barber had the highest percentage of their team's offenses. The year that Tiki Barber like really went nuts and picked it up like to super duper amounts. And then they just didn't really think he was the one completely. And they went and drafted Cedric, and they rammed Cedric into a terrible situation for him. And they created a dynamic. I mean, they basically did 3 things. Number one, they created this bad dynamic between Thomas and Cedric because Thomas is a self-starter anyways. He doesn't need oh, they've drafted my replacement. Now I'll do. Thomas plays hard regardless. So you didn't need that. And then you took the number 4 pick. I mean, this is all, you know, ancient history, but you took the number 4 pick when even if you had just taken one of the linebackers. So Merriman, Derek Johnson, but the big one, DeMarcus Ware.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine Urlacher, Briggs, Ware as your linebackers. Hillenmeyer is your all-purpose sub / like super special teamer. Obviously, the big one is they probably wouldn't have done this because we had just drafted Rex, but with his injuries 03-04, obviously the big one is if you draft Rodgers. And then the whole of history is different. But if we hadn't drafted Ced, then, you know, there's no way we trade Thomas. And there are a lot of things that are then different. But, yeah, he's a really special dude, really special player. Got to know him, really, really, you know, just genuine person. Someone who I root for as much or more off the field as I did for him on the field. And, you know, I think about when they had the Lovie Smith team reunion in 2019, they brought all those guys back to Soldier Field, and all those Bears picked Thomas Jones to be the one to lead them out of the tunnel, you know? So it's not just me, it's not just you, it's not just fans, it's his teammates. So, yeah, he plays a pretty significant role in the book.
Yes, so like, you're obviously a lifelong Chicago's fan, a lifelong fan of the Bears, but the fact that you were on the Bears beat for a while, actually getting a chance to cover these guys, you know, that had to be a really unique experience. Yeah, it had to be a lot of fun for you. I know. One of my favorite stories you did was the box game with Urlacher and these guys, and just seeing a different side of these guys. That, I mean, no one was writing about that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden here you are with this cool, crazy thing that no one has any idea what's going on.
I had a really big advantage being at Red Eye, which was that I didn't have any responsibilities other than the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because Red Eye could syndicate any Tribune story that they wanted. So when there was a big moment, when Jay got knocked out against Houston, obviously when Urlacher got injured after the Seattle game, or, you know, when we're setting records for takeaways and turnover touchdowns and all that. Charles Tillman, four punch outs that year. When any of those things were happening, Red Eye could take the Tribune stories. I didn't have any beat responsibilities, so I could do whatever I wanted. And no one was doing the stuff that I was doing. And I wasn't, so because of that, I wasn't beholden to the scrums. So I could really work the room and get a lot of stuff that other people, because they had just different responsibilities, not because they didn't have like creativity or anything, but like when you're in there as a news gatherer, it's going to be your primary focus. When, you know, when you're in the locker room and you're interviewing someone, but Devin Hester all of a sudden has a microphone on him, zoom, you know, like bees to honey. But there were a lot of people who did great work in that room. And I think a lot about Vaughn McClure, the reporter for the Tribune, who sadly passed away. I watched him for like 15 or 20 minutes just sit and interview John Scott. And just all that buzz around you in the locker room, because it's like, so I don't know how it is now, but at the time it was like, I counted at one time that there were 40 media members and one bear in the locker room.
Nice.
So between the reporters and the people with the cameras for the networks, 40. And so when someone would walk in, all of a sudden it'd be like, zoop, go over there. And so I just like you'd see the scrum like bounce back and forth between the lockers. And I remember just watching Vaughn McClure just sit there next to Jonathan Scott, just talking. Time's going by, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just talking. It's like on a Tuesday. And he put out a great feature on John. It was awesome. It was awesome to just sit and watch him block out all the noise, just set everything aside, say, I don't care who walks into this locker room. If, you know, fucking Mike Singletary walks into this locker room right now, if the fucking ghost of George Halas walks into this locker room right now, I am not taking my focus off of you, Jonathan Scott, at that time, a backup tackle. And then he got some starts a little bit later, but he was a backup at this point. It was awesome.
It had to be engaging, the fact that he was talking to a guy who probably no one has probably spent that much time with him to kind of get his story.
Absolutely not.
So he must have been tickled just to pour it all out there. And
completely.
You know, I think it kind of speaks to some of your style though, because you're, like I said, you've done stuff on the beat as far as in their newspapers, blogs, Twitter. You know, your writing style is very, very flexible through the years, and I think that comes through in the book because you got some stuff in there from everywhere you've written, basically.
Yeah, everywhere. So the earliest piece is from when I was 17.
High school, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted one high school story that I love that's very personal to me and my family, and also just showed like me at 17, which I thought was interesting. And I did it as a cold open, which I've never seen in a book, but you know, on like a TV show where they have the HBO, and then like there's one scene and then the credits and then the TV show. I was like, it'd be cool to do like a cold open. Like you literally open the book. Excuse me, sorry, I'm drinking a pop. You literally open the book and boom, like there's a story. Like there hasn't been any other introduction. I like the idea of that. So that's newspaper time. My first paid job, my first paid writing job was at Nouveau Newsweekly in Indianapolis. It's still around. It's the Chicago Reader. It's the alternate indie paper, weekly piece of Indianapolis. I wrote a story there in 2005 when the Bears were 1-3 and the Colts were having a little bit of a struggle, but not really. They were undefeated, but I think like maybe Peyton hadn't thrown a touchdown. They finally had a defense. And I wrote this piece about how, like, you know, God, you guys don't even know. You don't even realize that you've got like a defense now, and this is how you'll eventually win a championship. I compared Peyton Manning versus the Patriots of that era to Raiders of the Lost Ark when the guy swings the sword and then Indy just pulls his gun out and shoots him.
Yeah.
And all these Colts fans were, writing letters to the newspaper and being like, who's this guy? And you failed in Chicago. That's why you're working in Indianapolis. I was like, that's a terrible thing to think about yourself. I'm sorry that you feel that way.
Right.
And they were like, you Bears are 1-3 and blah. And I haven't been able to get it, but they had the entire letters to the editor. The headline on that next week's letters to the editor was Silverstein, go back to Chicago. Oh, I wish I had that still. I've called over there to see if I can get it. But yeah. So that was Nuvo, and
so real quick, you hyped up the Colts before the 06 season, saying how this team is up and coming. They got a defense, and then they end up beating our Bears
correct.
in the damn Super Bowl.
Correct. That's all correct. So I was in Indy. I was dating someone who was going to school there, and so I was living in Indy. I was teaching preschool, and I was writing for this newspaper. And I don't remember where I was hearing it, but basically like the buzz all throughout town was complaining that Peyton Manning maybe didn't have a touchdown pass yet. This was coming off the year where he had the record 49.
Yeah.
But they were winning like 10-6, 13-3, like the first 3 weeks of the season or 4 weeks of the season. They were all these like close wins and their defense was playing great. And I was like, look, y'all, like Peyton Manning's going to be back. Don't sweat it. Like Peyton, Marvin, Edge, like you guys, this offense is going to do its thing. You have a defense now. And I played the whole, like, I know football. I'm from Chicago. And they were like, your fucking team is 1-3. And so, like, yeah, it added a little, not that anything could have made losing the Super Bowl worse.
Oh, no, it stings.
But it added this little thing because it was also because they were like a dome team, and this was the first ever bad weather Super Bowl, and they adjusted to it, and we didn't. They like pounded the run, and we didn't. And they came up with these huge Bob Sanders trucking people, and we had some that Super Bowl peanut punch is my favorite peanut punch ever, where he punched it out from Brian Fletcher, held him up, set him down, and fell on the ball. But yeah, it just added a little bit of extra sting because I had gone in print a year earlier and told Colts fans, like, this is how you will end up winning a Super Bowl, is the fact that you have a defense now, which has been the problem against the Patriots in 03 and 04. Oh, God, they were just, go back. What do you know? Your team's 1-3, man. And then we had the 8-game winning streak.
Yeah. How crazy would it have been? Obviously, the Bears, we all know what happened. Had it been flipped, had the Bears pulled it off. I know back then people weren't pulling receipts on stuff, but I think you probably would have had some fun pulling some of those letter to the editor receipts, talking trash on your Bears.
Yeah, that would have been. Oh gosh, yeah, I think about that Super Bowl a lot. I mean, that's why it's
very personal to you.
It's extreme. That was my Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I was too young for 85. I mean, I was caught up in the hype. I was 4 years old, but that's not my team. Like this was my team. This was me. Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't see Prince's halftime show until after he died, because I was pacing up and down my parents' stairwell at their condo during halftime. So I didn't see Prince, and I didn't watch it until after he passed away. So 10 years later. And obviously it's the greatest.
Iconic. Yeah.
I think Michael Jackson is like the greatest Super Bowl halftime event, but I think Prince is the greatest Super Bowl halftime concert. Like as a piece of music, I would just listen to that show as a piece of music. And I don't think I would like as a live set, and I don't think that would be the case for most other performers. But yeah, I didn't watch that. And I was pacing up and down wearing a white headband that I'd written in Sharpie, Grossman. And I don't have a picture of that, which is too bad. But yeah, I was in a Grossman headband. Oh gosh, I was so upset.
So much angst with that near miss of a title, but you did have a chance to cover the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, that's one of the greatest eras. You know, you wrote about that in your book, How the GOAT Was Built: 6 Life Lessons from the 1996 Chicago Bulls. You have like I said, I mentioned your Shot on Elo Substack. I subscribe to one of your what is it called, the email thing I do where I get it like from you. It's like a bull story. Where is this?
Yeah, so I'm working on a book, Six Rings, that will be the first comprehensive book on the '90s Bulls, and it's just taking so damn long that I'd always had the idea of a collection in my head. I knew that I had the cover, and because Six Rings was just it's going well. It's just taking so long, and I feel bad that I haven't been able to put something out yet. But in the meantime, I was really like itching to put something out, and I was like, all right, well, I'll just like move this collection idea up my list.
Yeah.
You know, instead of it being the second thing I put out, let's just make it the first. And but yeah, so like the '90s Bulls Substack is great. Just did an interview with Craig Hodges that just came out. I've got one in the can with Bill Cartwright that'll be coming out soon. I had a really fun conversation with Mark Carman about going to Bulls games when he was going 80s and into the 90s and doing some. He sent me pictures of. They would have like events where you could like come to Chicago Stadium and meet a bunch of players. And they're like, it was like an autograph table. It was like a walkthrough, and you would just meet all the players somehow in like 88, 87, 88, 89. And so Mark Carm has these great pictures of him as a kid with all these players, including MJ. So we talked about those. I just did a great one with Steve Shanwald, who was the head of marketing for the Bulls over a run of different titles. I think in the end he was senior vice president of basketball operations, but he was their head of marketing. I mean, he was the guy who was, you know, his job was like, how do we keep selling tickets after MJ leaves? And, you know, the Bulls in those 6 seasons after the second three-peat cumulatively led the NBA in attendance. In 6 seasons where they had the 5 worst records in franchise history. So he did that. That was a really good one. Did one recently also with Ray Clay, and also interviewed someone who had Ray Clay announce his bar mitzvah, and another guy who had him announce his wedding. They would give him scripts and he would make tapes. And then I got to do a great one with Craig Fite, who was the Pizza Hut pizza delivery guy who brought MJ the pizza before the flu game. That became a story during The Last Dance.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way The Last Dance portrayed it, in part because I'm a Bulls historian, and in part because I'm a longtime pizza guy. And I was working in the corporate pizza game just 4 years after the flu game at Domino's in Bloomington, Indiana. So there were some things that stood out to me about the way that Tim Grover and George Kohler told that story, and MJ somewhat told that story. But I was like, come on, that's bullshit. Like, I know pizza delivery, and this is nonsense. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff on there.
So you mentioned The Last Dance. You know, that's Michael Jordan's story. He was
correct.
A piece of that. I mean, what's your take on all the drama going on with Pippen and the stuff they're doing with the tour in Australia? I mean, is this just these guys just sour grapes? Or, I mean, do you think they got really a beef there? Or do you think it's just them just trying to capitalize on the situation?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think The Last Dance was kind of bogus, especially to Scotty. I didn't think that their decision making about what the movie was fuzzy and was adjustable based on what they wanted to be doing. Because obviously it was marketed as a 98 Bulls movie. It was shot as a behind-the-scenes 98 Bulls movie. Now, you know that any 98 Bulls story is going to be also hugely an MJ story. But I was thinking it was going to be more like the Jordan Rules or the Great Blood on the Horns. Jordan Rules, obviously Sam Smith, Blood on the Horns, great book by Roland Lazenby, where it was a team story. MJ is the main character because he's MJ, but it very much tells the story from the perspective of every individual who is interviewed and who's in the book. So I was hoping it would be that, but I mean, looking at it from Scotty's perspective, it's like is this a Michael Jordan movie? It seems like it. But then what's the 1.8 seconds doing in there?
Yeah.
Is it a 90s Bulls movie? It seems like it. But then where is Scottie leading the comeback in Game 6 against the Blazers? Where is Scottie's dunk to win the Wizards series or the Bullets series in 97? I don't think they had in anything really, although I don't remember. I could be wrong, but I don't remember them having anything about Scottie making the steal after Steve Kerr's jumper to win 97. Scottie then had the steal to knock out the inbound pass. It was only a 2-point game. I don't remember seeing that. So it's like, if it's a Bulls movie, where's the Scottie stuff? If it's an MJ movie, why is this other shitty Scottie stuff?
Yeah.
When Michael wasn't on the team, unless you are going to use that to then draw a connection back to 96, but they didn't really do that either. It was just kind of like, here's a crummy thing that happened.
Yeah.
So I can understand totally why Scottie has beef, but Scottie also can't get out of his own way because Scottie's on the record saying everything twice, the opposite. I mean, Scottie contradicts himself. He wrote that memoir, Unguarded. It's great, but he like contradicts himself in it. Scottie contradicted himself in his own press for the book in the book. So like in the press leading up to the book, he said that the reason that Phil didn't drop the play for him and gave it to Tony was because he wanted a white guy to succeed. And then that became a whole storyline when he was doing those interviews. But then in the actual book, he says, you know, I only really said that because I was frustrated and I needed a reason. And then when I thought back about it, but he's referring to the promotion that he was doing for the book that it's like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's very confusing. But I'm one of the biggest Scottie fans ever. I really don't care a lot about a lot of that stuff. He's also been through a really, really hard run. Divorce, a very public divorce. His son died. And then on top of that, you get The Last Dance, which dominated the discourse and dominated everything in those early weeks of COVID. So I totally understand it. I just feel sad that like those guys don't get along. And but I asked Cartwright about it, and I said, what do you think about like everybody like not getting along? And it's like it sucks because it's like feels like all these reunions should be so joyous and they're often so sullied. Like, what's up? And he was like, I don't know. That's just two guys who don't get along. The rest of us are fine. And then he started listening. He was like, I just talked to him. I just talked to BJ. I just talked to, so, or I don't know, whatever. All good. I don't care. Let them do their thing. And also, fact is that the people who were there, who were in Sydney, who were in Melbourne, because there's a lot of Bulls fans, obviously because of Luke, and some Bulls historians who are Australian, and they were there, and they said that it really wasn't anything like that. It really was just like a really comfortable, family-friendly, fan-based talk about our careers, just sort of good stuff. So I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, in the moment when that was out, I mean, I obviously like I love that Bulls era. That was outstanding. Yeah. So in the moment, it was like fantastic stuff to watch. So like I didn't pick up on the negative connotations that it had with some of the other players. So it was kind of a little interesting there, but looking back now, I can see why some players were a little ticked off. So let me take a quick break for the podcast side of things. Make a note here at the time. I always forget this, and then let Jack go run and get your charger.
Yeah,
Hurry up, man. Go get it quickly.
All right, I'll go get it real quickly.
All you guys are joining us here on Second Jordan, and I appreciate it. Make sure you guys all pick up Jack's book. Like I said, it is available on his website, readjack.com. Why We Root, Volume 1, Mad Obsessions of a Chicago Sports Fan. His Substack is also fantastic, A Shot on Elo. Follow him on the Twitter at readjack. Of course, he still does stuff with us at Windy City Gridiron. But the book is cool though. It's you guys, Bears fan, didn't know him from WCG. A few of the WCG articles are in the book, but a lot of you guys who only know him from that may not know his other stuff that he's done. And like I said, it's like 3 decades. You know, I didn't realize Jack was that old. He's not quite as old as me, but it's kind of cool to kind of go through it and kind of see his life as a sports fan in Chicago, basically growing up around everything. So it's kind of cool to see that. His next book coming out, of course, 6 Rings, Chicago Bulls. If anyone's into the Bulls stuff, you got to check that out, because his last book, it's an ebook. You can get that again from his website, How the GOAT Was Built. 6 life lessons for the 1996 Chicago Bulls. And of course, like I said, his Substack. So look at Jack is back now. He's got his phone charger.
No, my computer charger. I was almost.
The computer charger. I gotcha. Nice.
So I don't know, man. The Bears beat was dope. The Super Bowl was bad. What else we got? Oh, there's a lot of Bartman in here. I'm sorry, everybody, but it all turns out well.
It does turn out well. See, I did want to ask you one baseball question. I know you mentioned you don't have a lot of baseball thoughts now, but you are a Cubs fan, but you are not anti-White Sox like so many other so where did you get this? Like, because that's rare. I mean, it's rare to find a Chicago sports fan that likes both teams. Obviously, Cubs, you're number one, but it's rare to find a fan that can appreciate both sides of town.
Yeah, the way that it started was that was with the 93 Sox and with my best friend at the time, and still one of my very dear friends, but you know, like how best friends are, you know, Luke Larmy. And Luke's family was super hardcore White Sox, and they were more into the White Sox than certainly in 1992 and 1993 my family was into the Cubs, because the Cubs at 89 and they started to sink. And we had the Bulls. My dad was a Hawks fan. The Hawks have been, in the Cup. Obviously, there's no, like, your Bears interest never wanes. That doesn't get affected by anything. So it was just kind of that. And like the White Sox were young, exciting, powerful, good. Got Bo Jackson. There was just like a lot happening with the White Sox, other than obviously Frank, Robin, Rock Reigns, Joey Cora, Blackjack, Alex Fernandez, Roberto Hernandez, Dan Pasqua, Pudge Fisk right at the end of his time. There was just, a lot there. And so I got into the White Sox and was like, all right, I'm a White Sox fan now. And I held that until 98 where my final tip over was at a Game 3, a Sunday game at Wrigley of Cubs Sox. So once Interleague had started and they were having actual series between the two as opposed to just the Crosstown Classic. And so my parents took me and my brother, and I just kind of had this. The Cubs were in a little bit of a magical season, and 7th inning stretch hit, and it was just and it's root, and just from the fingernails of my soul came Cubbies, and I was just all right. It was just sort of different. But because of that, I've or maybe not because of that, I don't know what's causation, but just in the way that I am, I've never beefed with the White Sox. I've never looked at them. I look at them as some other team that I don't root for, that doesn't have a bearing on my emotions. But that a lot of my very best friends, my group growing up was Cubs, Sox. And really in a tighter way, it was Cubs, Sox. So there were a lot, and the Sox fans were probably more into the Sox than the Cubs fans were into the Cubs, or at least it seemed that way. So I never had any ill will. And the White Sox were just a fun team that were nearby. As a sports fan, you're always drawn to some degree to access. I mean, and that's how you end up with Cubs fans and Braves fans in the 90s all over the world because of WGN and right, because you have superstations. So for the White Sox, it's just they're on TV here. They're right there in the newspaper. My best friends who are otherwise 100% aligned with me, they're all Bears fans, they're all Bulls fans, they're all Northwestern fans, they're White Sox fans. So I never had a problem with them. And that '05 White Sox team was just one of the greatest Chicago teams, greatest Chicago seasons I've ever seen. The fact that the Cubs weren't good that year, coming off of the '03 playoffs and then the '04 end of season collapse, it actually won one more game in '04 than we did in '03. But we weren't good in '05, other than Derek Lee, who almost hit the Triple Crown. But the White Sox were wire to wire. They won the first game of the season 1-0. They won the last game of the season, Game 4 of the World Series, 1-0. They had this immediate new vibe because they had gotten rid of Carlos Lee and Mags and gotten Podsednik and Jermaine Dye.
Yeah.
So they immediately felt different. And just what a magical season. What a wonderful season. That postseason, that we've never seen anything like that. Those 4 complete games in the ALCS. Przynski was in his first year with the team that year. What a huge figure he was. And just the combination of like the huge personality and the iconic plays. You had Joe Creedy, who'd been in the system for a while and it was like, when's it going to happen? And then all of a sudden he had that great year. He turned into Mr. October. And then years later, I learned that Jermaine Dye chose 23 because he was in Chicago. He was like, I grew up a Jordan fan. And he had always remembered with the Royals and with Atlanta, he was 24. And he was like, he tweeted this. He was like, I came to Chicago. And I was like, well, if I'm playing in Chicago, if I'm playing in Mike's hometown, well, I got to wear his number. And so he changed his number to 23, and he goes out and he brings home for the city and for White Sox fans a World Series MVP. Come on, man. That was an incredible experience as a fan. And yeah, I got to enjoy it kind of low stakes. So when the White Sox they had that one stretch toward the end of the season where was it Cleveland or Detroit? I think it was Cleveland. Got real close. They never overtook them. White Sox were wire to wire, but they got real close. So I was like, that didn't bother me. Like I didn't want it to happen, but I didn't have that emotional letdown or concern. But what a fun team that was. So no, that's never bothered me if the White Sox do well. I don't care.
That's so rare, yeah.
In fact, one of the best phone calls I got during Game 7 or after Game 7 that night was from my buddy Nick, who's a White Sox fan. That was one of the most celebratory, congratulations, we had it, I'm so glad you get to have it kind of a thing. That was one of the best phone calls I got.
Yeah, it's just weird to me because my number one team is not the Cubs or the Sox. So I've always thought it was strange that why are you rooting against a team that's not even in your division? I get it, Chicago, but it just was always kind of strange. It was some fans are so angry about it, like the rivalry, like little brother. It's like, why are they fighting over it? They're not in the same division. I mean, when they're playing, I get it. When they're playing, it's you want to beat the other side of town, but I never understood that whole thing there. And then you did mention the championship. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the team, but I found myself hoping the White Sox would pull it out. I thought it was kind of cool. My dad was a White Sox fan. My mom was a Cubs fan. So it was kind of neat to see,
where did they grow up?
My dad lived in Michigan most of his life.
Okay.
I don't know how he became a Sox fan, to be honest with you. And then my mom, she's always, in the suburbs, but yeah, she just always was a Cubs fan. And, my mom actually had passed, years before the Cubs won it. But as I'm sitting there watching the Cubs are my number 2. So I'm a Tigers fan, diehard, but Cubs are my number 2. I've always liked the Cubs. But as I'm watching the Cubs, all I could think about was my mom.
Yeah.
Because I knew her and my grandma, my aunt, they were such Cubs fans, and they were gone at this point. But I'm like, man, So like I kind of understood how emotionally powerful it was to so many Cubs fans.
Definitely.
Because of, family, because of tradition, because of, they're always, just missing it. And they had a chance to finally do it. So that was kind of cool. You mentioned Bartman's a part of your book.
Yeah, Bartman was, I think that like the 2 formative losses.
Yeah.
The formative loss of my life was Game 7 of the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals. that was the formative loss. But in terms of like where you're older and now you've been around the block a little bit, and now it's like, oh, some of these games can still hurt you, or like some things like the Bears and the Cubs thing just kind of like it's not settled. It wasn't. I mean, the Bears thing still isn't, but it's really not settled till you had your championship, and obviously no one had a Cubs championship. So Bartman messed me up really bad. Game 7 more so, actually. In the moment, Bartman didn't actually mess me up that much. It was shocking, but I was at my favorite bar in Bloomington, which I heard closed, Yogi's, and I just went. It was this great. It was I didn't drink until I was a senior in college, so I didn't have like a fake ID. I didn't do bars, and I didn't like it. I didn't like a lot of the noise and a lot of but Yogi's was like my kind of place. Like everybody hung out, talked, darts, pool, jukebox, TVs, chicken wings. It was like a sports bar, but it was like a little bit elevated from that. Like it wasn't TVs like you know.
No.
But what it was on Sundays, you could go there, all the nearby fans. So not really the Colts fans, but Bears fans, Bengals, Browns, Lions, Packers. Everybody would go there, and they would put like tablecloths over all the pool tables, and people would bring flags like a fucking like the moon landing, and they were just like Bears table, and you'd look around and be all these little fan hubs at Yogi's. So it had a really great spirit, and I was at Yogi's for games 5, 6, and 7 of the NLCS. And I was talking, and I sort of made friends there. I had just shown up. I don't remember where my people were. But so I was just there, and, you make friends, but I'm locked in on the game. And this guy at the end of the game said, hey, we're going tomorrow, because game 7 was the next night. And he was like, we're driving to Chicago. Like, do you want to come? Whether in their car or probably I would have driven myself. But, like, do you want to come with, and we'll get tickets together? And I just remember being like, no, that's, like, way too desperate of a move to do all that, like, because we still have Woody going tomorrow. Like, we're still going to win the series. Like, I was like, thank you. That's really, thanks for thinking of me, stranger in the bar. But that's too big of a, I got to call off classes and everything because no. We're going to win tomorrow. So when we didn't win game 7 and we were up after the Alou homer, I was pretty broken. And then when we didn't win in 08, and then I was really broken. And then I really didn't watch the Cubs until like 2015. Not like I was really shattered after 08. And then they weren't good in 09, and that was the Milton Bradley thing. And then they tore it all down, and then Ricketts, Theo, and everything. And so I kind of came back like probably late 14. But yeah, 03 and 08 really hurt me in ways that I don't know that I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, sports loss is like, fandom. We're fanatics. That's why everything's so passionate. That's why Bears Twitter, it's so passionate right now, because we're all.
That's one word for it.
We're all obsessed with our favorite teams. It's kind of crazy. So worst loss was Bartman or the double doink? The Bartman series.
Oh, Bartman was. Oh yeah, no. The worst loss is XLI, and
yeah.
and this. I guess probably the second loss is Game 7, 1990 against Detroit. Third is probably Game 7, or now kind of 6 and 7 together of the 03 NLCS. And then the only loss that I was kind of like devastated but like okay with because of what the season was the Rose Bowl against USC. Because I grew up in Evanston, so Northwestern was our backyard. We could hear the PA from our house. So on days when we wouldn't get tickets, and that was back when you could get a ticket stub from like a friend leaving the game in the third, and you and a buddy could go in on the stub. You and a buddy could go in at the beginning of the game on one ticket. We did that plenty of times. So that was like a different kind of a home team. Like that was our team. Like that was our backyard, Dyke Stadium, and we would go there when it was just unlocked. Until the Rose Bowl, nobody cared. So it was just unlocked, and we would go in. We would ride our bikes around, around the concourse, but we would go and play football like on the field. And after it's one of my favorite Northwestern stories. So yeah, that one's in the book. Shout out to my buddy Donnie. After Northwestern upset Boston College, the year that Boston College beat Florida State. The year that Boston College beat Notre Dame, the year that Notre Dame beat Florida State, and Florida State won the national title. That was the closest Northwestern got to winning a national title in my life to that point, was we beat the team that beat the team that beat the champs. But they won 22-21 on a 2-point conversion with, I don't know how, a minute left or something. We stormed the field, and then after that, someone had drawn the route of I think it must have been the game tying touchdown, the route of the pass on the field. And so me and my friend Donnie, we went out there and we just stood on the field, and like I got to be Len Williams, the quarterback, and he was Len Gissendenner. And then I'd throw it to him, and then we trade. And so we each got to run the route. So that Northwestern team in 95 that went to the Rose Bowl, that loss was a little bit different as well, but it had such levity to it because that season was so special and so out of nowhere. That one didn't hit quite as hard. The Bartman one hit really hard. And I was interviewing Paul Bacco and Mark Pryor 10 years later, and we did an oral history on the Bartman inning, so that I had the pitcher and the catcher demystifying the inning and just talking through, your approach at bat by at bat. And Paul Bacco at the end of it, or at some point, we talked for like an hour, he was like, hey, do you ever hear, like, do you think they're going to have us back to the park? Like, do you think they're going to have like a 03 Cubs day at Wrigley? And I was like, I don't think so, man, because people are pretty upset. And Paul Bacco was just like, oh, okay. And he was so sweet. And I thought of him when the Cubs won, where I was like, as much as like, I'm happy for me, I'm happy like for my grandparents, you're happy for your mother, I was also just thinking about all the players who, like, they wanted to be the team that did it. Paul Bacco wanted to be one of the guys who won the Cubs World Series. Thomas Jones wanted to be the running back of the Super Bowl champion Chicago Bears. Like, he talked about watching video of the 85 parade or the 86 parade leading up to the game in the hotel. Like, Thomas wanted to be like our champion. Like, Paul Bacco wanted to be our champion. And a lot of these guys feel that way. And so that's something I always keep in mind. And Paul Bacco was someone who I was thinking of during Game 7 because he deserved it, and he was a good dude. Is a good dude, I'm sure. I'm sure he's doing fine.
Yeah, I'm surprised they've never. I never thought of that about that. You mentioned it, but they never have brought none of those teams back for any big thing in Chicago. It's because of the pain. That's why.
It's got to be. Yeah. I mean, that's what was so nice about them retiring Chelios's number, was like, all right, that's now officially, once you had a dynasty, or whatever we want to call the 2010s Hawks.
Yeah.
Because the Kings won 3 as well, so I don't know if they're a dynasty, but that incredible, masterpiece of a group. And think about how many of those guys are going to have their numbers in the rafters. Hossa already does. Yeah. So, but then to really go back to Chris Chelios and be like, you know what? Like, yeah, they traded him, Red Wings, he won a title with the Wings and everything, but like, he meant so much, especially being from here. But even still, like, he just meant so much. Jeremy Roenick meant so much. Eddie Belfour meant so much. Steve Larmer meant so much. So it's nice to see all those guys. And I can't talk about retired numbers in Chicago without mentioning Bulls got to get it together and get Norm Van Leer up there. That is long, embarrassingly overdue, and almost doesn't matter now. And he should have had that when he was alive. But got to get number 2 up there.
Did you ever hear the story about Norm Van Leer cursed his number? Have you ever heard this story?
No.
I don't remember where I heard it. It was years ago, obviously, but it was I think it was Michael Jordan who was saying it. It was like on a throwaway interview. He mentioned that when someone came to Chicago, don't take number 2. Didn't Dennis Hobson have 2 for a minute?
Norm cursed it.
Cursed his number. So anyone who wore that would not be good.
So I haven't heard it like in those terms, and I haven't heard that MJ was mentioning it.
Yeah.
But I have been aware of it. Yes, Dennis Hobson did have it. Eddie Curry did have it. And they did tell Eddie not to take number 2 because of the. So yeah, I guess I had heard that, but I had not heard the MJ thing, and I heard it more of like it's cursed.
Yeah.
You know, like Bears QB number 8, it's cursed.
Yeah.
But it's not that Norm was like a pox upon your house or anything.
Crazy. Yeah, I always thought he should have a rafter up there. His number of rafters. I got into the Bulls later when it was like right as Jordan was coming. That's when I got into it. But then I've always kind of wanted to look back and saw some old film on that, and those are some good teams. And I never understood why Van Leer didn't have his number up there because
it should have happened right after Jerry Sloan.
Yeah,
Jerry Sloan was first. Fine, he's the original Bull, 1966, no problem. Should have happened right after Jerry Sloan.
Yeah, crazy. Jack, we have gone about an hour here. I could talk sports to you all night, but I do want to get one last question into you before I get you out of here, because this question comes to me once in a while.
I'm free to be. So
I'm sure you are, but I want, because like I said, you have kind of spanned all mediums, right? You've kind of done the writing thing,
definitely.
For other journalists trying to break into the game, right? What's some advice you got for these guys that are trying to do their thing? And, obviously the game has changed quite a bit through the years, so what advice would you give someone right now trying to get their name out there and get their byline going out there and do their thing?
Yeah, that's hard. And I always fear is the wrong word. I always pause knowing that to some degree, my story is my story. And I don't know, and it isn't even perfect. And I don't know how much I have to contribute, but I'll say a few things. Number one, finish and publish. Publish wherever you can. Finish a piece of work. Say to yourself, this work is done. It is as good as it can be today. The famed, art's not finished, it's just abandoned. I mean, you gotta learn to finish and publish and say, this was the best I could do today, and let yourself be judged by your reader and by an audience. And then while they're reading that one, you're writing the next one, and just keep going. But you got to finish, and it's got to be public. I mean, that is probably the biggest difference, or one of the biggest differences between people who are doing it and people who aren't. A great writing teacher, Tony Artizzoni, shout out. Great Bears fan as well. Great author. I found his book recently in a used bookshop. One of his books, one of his many, and I had to grab it. And I texted him. I said, "Tony, you Utes." He didn't. This was before I knew him. But shout out to Tony. But one of the things that he would say is, he said, "There's no such thing as being a writer, like as an identity." He said, "You're either writing or you're not writing." I was like that because it put it into the act. It wasn't about I'm a writer. It's you're either writing or you're not writing. And the only thing I would add to that is finish and publish. And Tony always published, and I'm sure he would agree. But that would be one thing. Finish and publish. Get it out there so that people can see. I don't know about you, but I feel my stuff better and see it better when it's someone else can judge me on it. That's when you really look at your words more closely and you go, "Oh shit, did I publish that?" Or like, you know what, that was pretty good. Yeah. So that would be one thing. I would say another thing would be that you need like different ages of mentors. So I like to have mentors, and I have mentors. I have two in particular who I grew up reading and who were important to me when I was growing up. It's Rick Toner and Scoop Jackson, and they've become friends and confidants, and hangout buddies, and it's been a really special relationship. But Rick and Scoop also came up at a time when the business was very different, even though they've continued their success and they've continued to adapt, and they just came up at a different time. So I have found it beneficial to then also have mentors who are maybe like 5 years ahead of me or like 10 years ahead of me, as opposed to like a generation ahead of me, because they are more likely to be dealing with the things from a business work standpoint that I'm dealing with. Or people my age who have done things that I haven't done, or people who are younger than me who have done things that I haven't done. But then I also feel, and you wouldn't quite call them mentors. I think mentorship does imply there is an age thing, but I collect or I look to writers who are a generation behind me, who I've gotten to know when I was their high school journalism teacher through TrueStar, or just people who are clearly like behind me age-wise. And I look to them for guidance on how to best navigate all these forms and all these systems that we're talking about, because in a lot of ways, those are the things that are happening now are the things that they grew up with, and therefore they're the naturals, and I'm the one who's adapting. So I find it very beneficial to have mentors or confidants or people who you can judge yourself against, or people who you can get advice from, or that you can. I just find it useful to have them at multiple ages and for different reasons. But yeah, I mean, Scoop and Rick were like my heroes growing up, and now they're the people who I can text and ask for advice, or I don't make many professional decisions without checking in with one of them, if not both. And they're also really useful because they're still doing it. And but I think it's also just nice to remember that like the people who you looked up to are just also regular people. Like you can do the things that they've done, and people can do the things that you're doing, and things like that. So I would say that's big number 2, get like a range of mentors. Number 3, don't be an asshole. One of my, the Oscars are coming up, and when Ben Affleck won his Best Picture Oscar for Argo in 2012, 2013, and he got up there and he just said, "Don't hold grudges," and don't hold grudges. I mean, this is an industry where everybody's up and everybody's down. Everybody is flying high and then gets laid off. Everybody has their favorite publication, and then that publication folds, and then they take their clips offline. Everybody is in a position where they're going to hire you and where you're going to hire them. So just be a good person. Be good, be a listener, be a helper, do things for others, make sure that people are taken care of, use your connections to help people, all those things. And I do them because they're the right thing to do. But they are also very important career-wise. And there were definitely times in my career where I had a bad attitude, or I didn't take something as seriously as I should have. I mean, the way that I got off the Bears beat was that I was kind of always trying to like be different. And I was thinking of myself as like, oh, I work in a locker room instead of I work in a corporate headquarters. And so, I got great stories. I made some great contacts, and I pissed off their PR people, and that's, game over. So, not like I wasn't doing anything bad, but I just kind of like was a little too following my own beat. And sometimes you have to just follow everybody else's beat, or find where it's okay to be yourself and where you gotta follow not like the rules, but like the ways. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't follow the ways.
Sometimes you got to play the game.
You gotta play the game. Yeah, absolutely. So that would definitely be number 3. And I would say be adaptable. Something that my cousin Abby told me some years ago. She said every move has to be able to build up and out. And you mentioned that I've been newspapers. blogs, magazines, web, books, but I've done columns, profiles, Q&As, long form pieces, narrative style. But I've done fiction, nonfiction, screenplays, long screenplays, short screenplays, stage plays, poetry, and I've done subject areas, sports, obviously, but I learned how to write hockey because the Blackhawks were the hottest thing in hockey when I was at Red Eye. Football, basketball, baseball, obviously, but I also covered, let's see, what else? Well, the Chicago Marathon, some biking, but then, right now I've been director of custom content for Aging Media for 4 years, been here 6 years. So learn how to write about healthcare, senior housing, hospice, behavioral health business, or behavioral health. Learn how to write white papers, learn how to write emails. My thing with emails is, I think is it Coco Chanel? I should know this by now, who said, before you leave the house, take one thing off. Before you send an email, take out one sentence. See if you can get one sentence out of your email. I always, when I write an email, the last thing I write in is the email address of who I'm sending it to, because I never wanted to send accidentally.
Yeah.
So I write the subject line, and then I write the email. I had a job that I didn't like at all at a law firm, but one thing that I learned there was how to write a business email. And the persona we wrote toward at this law firm was the well-paid, busy, angry, smart person. And so you had to write all of your emails based on it being read by the well-paid, busy, angry, smart person.
Yeah.
And you learn how to trim it, really cut the fat. And then that helps you in your fiction writing. So do all of these things. You're going to get paychecks from everywhere. And you're going to have to learn how to, and then I guess learn how to do something good in business at, whether it's learning how to say no to the first offer as a freelancer, whether it's how to say, I need more, sorry, this story, 75, no, it's going to be 100. 200, no, that's got to be 300. 500, no, that's got to be 800, whatever. Find ways to increase that. And like I was saying earlier about finishing, something that was really valuable to me was that I had my own website, and I was writing a lot of different types of stuff. This was in 2009, 2010, 2011. I was covering local politics. I was covering a lot of music. I was way up on the music scene. Obviously, I was doing sports. And slowly I found ways to take these pieces and put them somewhere else. So I took all my music pieces and I connected with Performer Magazine out of Massachusetts, and I connected with rapreviews.com. I think they were out of Kansas, and all my hip hop stuff went to them, and all of my rock stuff went to Performer Magazine. And then all my local government stuff went to Our Urban Times, founded by Elaine Corrins. What's up? And she literally wrote the book on Wicker Park history, the walking tour of Wicker Park. I don't remember the years. But, I found a way to put my stuff over there. And then with my Red Eye stuff, I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it over here. And then I'm going to take my Red Eye stuff, I'm going to take my Bear stuff, and I'm going to move it over to Windy City Gridiron. Always try to move your stuff to a bigger place, or a place that's better for you, and keep getting clips in a lot of places. And then save your shit, because all these online archives are getting wiped. So let's see, if we had to sum it up, write and finish, extend yourself based on story and project type, and also based on subject matter. Don't be an asshole. Play the game. Collect mentors of all ages for different purposes, and sometimes sort of the same purpose, but just from different perspectives. Learn to stand up for yourself in a business negotiation. You're better than you realize. And they're paying a lot of idiots to write things and they're not as good as you. So just keep that in mind and ask for more money. And but find out when sometimes you can do something for free, when it's going to pay off in some other way. network your balls off, and believe in yourself, and finish. It's finish.
This was outstanding. I'm going to take this last part of the show, make it into a TED Talk, and put it out there just on its own. That's good stuff. Jack M Silverstein.
The first TED Talk with balls off.
Why We Root, Volume 1, Mad Obsessions of a Chicago Sports Fan. Where can everyone get it? Amazon, I'm assuming?
Yeah, but if you are in Chicago, you can go to readjack.com, and my email's up there. And if you want an autographed copy for less expensive, actually, than it's on Amazon, if you're in Chicago, I can do that. And I'll be actually making the rounds on Saturday to drop some books off around the city to some people who have bought them. So those are coming soon. And let's see if I can pull it up real fast. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Wait. Can you see it?
What the hell is that? You gotta say it. I have really bad eyes. I'm old.
The acknowledgments. It says, "Thank you to the whole Windy City Gridiron team, as talented and supportive a group of writers as I've ever worked with, Lester Wilfong, Robert Zaglinski, Sam Householder, Jeff Burkus, Eric Derwachter, Ken Mitchell, EJ Snyder, and then I had to run fast, Kev, Schweik, Robert S., Jacob, Patty, Josh, Will, Bill, Aaron, and Dane. And to Gina Thomas for your tireless assistance."
Nice. Yeah, it has been a pleasure having you with the site for all these years. It's just it's been a blast just having the stuff, your wide variety. You know, some of your stuff has been like super deep dives, and it's been cool. I'm glad you're part of the team, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's been the best. And like that's connection, that's networking, because we had somehow linked up when I was at Red Eye and you were at Windy City Gridiron, and I did some pieces where I was interviewing either Bears fans or fans from like each NFC North team or something like that. Maybe a few of them, maybe just one. But I interviewed you, and
I think it was about Bears Packers week. I think we talked about something.
It was. Yeah, that sounds right.
I have that Red Eye somewhere around here.
and then I had a piece at the start of 2015 on Jay Cutler, and I pitched it to you and Dane. I think that's how it started, or you guys reached out to me. One of those two things, but we were kind of already thinking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, connections. Don't be a dick.
Yeah. Help everyone when you can.
Help everybody. That's right.
Be nice to people. We're all in the same sandbox.
We're all in the same sandbox. That's right. There's enough for everybody. Nothing gets me more excited than some writer I know or some, podcaster I know getting a new gig, getting a new spot, getting a new, I love it. I love it. There's enough for, and just keep going. I mean, and that's the other thing. Just keep going, because there are people who, I was chasing or I was even with, or it seemed like we were in the same level, and they left the game. I mean, they went and did something else. And so like, if you just keep going, you can create an opportunity. Now, how do you turn that opportunity into a 9-to-5? When you find out, you call and let me know.
Yeah.
But just keep going. I mean, the interesting thing about being a writer, of course, is that you can do it like until you can't talk or you can't move your hands or your brain doesn't work anymore. So like until dementia, until, whatever, like you can write, you can tell stories. And that's what I love about books, is that like, this is physical. It's something that people can just have and take and hold, and they can have it. It's theirs. It's not getting, knocked off of streaming. It's not getting taken offline. It's just, it is,
It's real. There's something about the touch of paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And the paper here, shout out to Gatekeeper Press, who I worked with on this, because the paper here just feels great.
It's very old
I
school.
wanted it to feel good. I like how books feel. I wanted my book to like, oh, I like this. I want to just hold it and read it.
And it's 1.2 pounds, you said it was? Is that
1.26.
Okay, 1.26.
Yeah. I don't know why we need to know that much. Maybe, I guess, for shipping.
In there, I'm always going to know this now, 1.26 pounds.
1.26, yeah.
It's kind of like the line in Jerry Maguire, how much does a brain weigh?
The human head weighs 8 pounds.
See? Nice. All right, Jack, that is it. We're going to get out of here. It's been a long one. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Lester. I appreciate you.
I'm going to put it on a podcast channel too, so you guys can listen to us again.
Yes. And thank you to you know what though? Big thank you not just to you all and the team, but the Windy City Gridiron readers and Windy City Gridiron audience, and like the comments where it's usually just straight hell. And the Windy City Gridiron audience and community is so great, so knowledgeable, so passionate, but key here, I think, so willing to listen to each other, that I have just like a fun time on those boards too. I mean, especially on like my pieces, because it's just easier to like spend more time. But I'll jump onto, you know, Sam's stuff or Josh's stuff. Obviously, Sack Watch is one of my all-time favorite ongoing series. But shout out to the Windy City Gridiron readers, especially the ones when I started who taught me about Unleash the Dragon. So I was glad that they hit me to that.
Yeah, it's a cool community. I mean, that's kind of what drew me in it years ago, and you know, it's changed through the years. But there's people that I have met online through there.
Yeah,
that I still talk to this day. I mean, now a lot of us over on Twitter, but it's funny how it's like, you know, it's a small world, and you know, like I've known these guys now for like I've known them longer than like I've known like real friends, quote unquote. It's like I talk to these guys more than I talk to anyone, just through the boards and stuff. So yeah, it's been fun. It's a nice experience. It's a good group there. It's not quite as crazy as some social media. Facebook, I avoid like the plague. Twitter's fine, but yeah, our comment section's always been kind of cool. There's, you know, it's like a family. There's some people you're like, oh God, this guy's around again. But at the end of the day, we're all Bears fans. We're all rooting for the same thing, Bears.
Yeah, and it's another thing because, like, you know, tips for people, like I said, right everywhere, and the work that the crew at Aging Media does that changes the way that business owners get to do their work. And you know, they're like, we're sourced hospice news, senior housing news, home healthcare news, behavioral health business, and skilled nursing news. Like, we're sourced in like Wall Street Journal, New York Times. We're industry leaders. And I kind of look at it the same way. Like, the people like John and George Yednak who founded Aging Media are just like fucking superstars. And I look at it like the Aging Media reporting staff and the Windy City Gridiron reporting staff just like equally bringing so much to the table. But you learn by being in your element and now I'm in my element. I've been there 6 years, but at the start, you know, I wasn't. You know, I didn't know obviously about the business of senior housing. And so to be able to like learn on this side, to be able to learn on this side, to be able to see entrepreneurs over to here with the Yednak brothers, to see like you and like what Jeff does and what Sam does, and it's just awesome. And so find your communities of writers, I guess is what I'm saying, because like I've got Windy City Gridiron, I've got Aging Media, the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin was a huge one for me. And again, another topic, another area where you're learning and stretching yourself. So, you know, when you know how to write, I guess I would sum it up this way. When you know how to write, you know how to do two things. You know how to write a story, and you know how to know a story. And you can use each of those to expand to something that you don't have. So you can, writing a story means like the types of writing that you're doing, and knowing a story means the subject matter. So you can expand what kind of stories you can write within the stories that you know. So you can learn how to do like long form narrative on the Bears beat because you're a columnist, because you know the Bears, and so you're comfortable in the subject matter, and you use that to stretch yourself for the style. But you can do the other as well. You can take a style that you know. Like, one of the ways that I got into a bunch of different story areas was just by doing Q&As, where I was like, I can walk into any story type for any publication, and I can do a really, really good, insightful Q&A So that's an example of like how you do it, being able to create flexibility for what you're talking about. And the opposite works as well.
Man, it's like a wealth of knowledge. It just never stops. That's good stuff. But we do got to get out of here. It is late. I got to cut this up. We'll have to do it again sometime, man. This is cool. And then, like I said, I'm downtown every Thursday, so let's meet up for lunch.
Yeah, let's do it.
I can get that book too.
Absolutely.
All right, Jack.
I got to get it to you.
All right, man. We will talk. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Until next time. Oh, we're going to give away one of your books on Monday night. Tune in. Me and JB are going to do the Bears free agency.
That's right.
Day. Of course, free agency starts on Monday at 11. We're going to jump on at 6 o'clock, talk about all the news of the day one. But we're also going to give away an autographed copy of Jack's book. So tune in then. Fair and Balanced, Monday night at 6 o'clock Central. And then we'll eventually give away one of Jack's books. But that's it, guy. I'm going to get out of here. Let's get out of here before we keep going because we will just not stop. So, Jack, appreciate it like always, my friend.
Thanks, Lester. I appreciate you, buddy.
We'll talk.